Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, pretty straightforward episode here, but this is a good one and a big one with a massive update that I want to bring to people's attention having to do with a local issue, one that I've brought up on the show with regularity, particular names, events, the local school district specifically, and I will refresh everyone's memory as to what specifically I'm referencing when I bring this up before I do. But I have, again, basically three stories here. I have one geopolitical thing that I just want to bring to everybody's attention, this education story, which will take up the vast majority of the episode, and then one jab-related thing that was sent by a former guest and listener of the show as well, which is troublesome, to say the least. But let me get to this very quickly. Geopolitically speaking, you've heard me mention Derek Johnson before and how he's written, of course, about the executive orders and the continuity of government and the Law of War Manual and a number of other things taking place, Insurrection Act being signed, a number of other things. How Joe Biden, of course, is not the legal president of the United States, Kamala Harris isn't the legal vice president of the United States, and Donald Trump is the commander-in-chief. Well, wouldn't you know it, just the other day here, on September 9th, he put this out on his X account with a link directly to it, proving that this is in fact the case, and he said the following, quote, and there it is, continuation of Executive Order 13848. It's on the whitehouse.gov site, not where continued executive orders are archived, the Federal Register. Executive Order 13848 with national emergency will provide all evidence of election interference for 2016, 2018, 2020, 2022, and 2024. It's going to roast all the swamp, both sides of the aisle, for their rigged system, swing states, etc. It also doesn't mean it will take a year to resolve simply because it was extended that long. And then, of course, he wrote 45 through 47 because he's still technically in charge. Here's the website now, whitehouse.gov. And here is the actual memo itself with the executive order. It was, again, dated September 9th, 2024, title, Message to the Congress on the Continuation of the National Emergency with Respect to Foreign Interference in or undermining public confidence in United States elections. It says to the U.S. Congress, or to the Congress rather, of the United States, Section 202D of the National Emergencies Act 50 U.S.C. 1622D provides for the automatic termination of a national emergency unless within 90 days prior to the anniversary date of its declaration, the President publishes in the Federal Register and transmits to the Congress a notice stating that the emergency is to continue in effect beyond the anniversary date. In accordance with the provision, I have sent to the Federal Register for publication the enclosed notice stating that the national emergency with respect to the threat of foreign interference in or undermining public confidence in United States elections declared in Executive Order 13848 of September 12th of 2018 is to continue in effect beyond September 12th, 2024. He says this, again, this is signed by Biden, allegedly, although we know it's not. It says, although there has been no evidence of a foreign power altering the outcomes or vote tabulation in any United States election, sure there hasn't, foreign powers, it says, have historically sought to exploit America's free and open political system. In recent years, the proliferation of digital devices and internet-based communications has created significant vulnerabilities and magnified the scope and intensity of the threat of foreign interference. The ability of persons located in whole or in substantial part outside the United States to interfere in or undermine public confidence in United States elections, including through the unauthorized accessing of election and campaign infrastructure, or the covert distribution of propaganda and disinformation, continues to pose an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. Therefore, I have determined that it is necessary to continue the national emergency declared in Executive Order 13848 with respect to the threat of foreign interference or in undermining public confidence in the United States elections. Joseph R. Biden Jr., White House, September 9th, 2024. Why would he re-up this himself? Why would he do that? Again, he's making the claim, assuming that he wrote this, which we know he didn't. Why would you continue that executive order which surveils anyone and everyone associated with election fraud? And it's not just foreign interference. It can be anyone in the United States. It can also, of course, be anybody in the United States who has connections with someone who is a foreign agent. It can also, of course, be foreign agents who have somebody with connection to the United States, vice versa. It almost doesn't matter. Point being, this is not an executive order that he would want to actually re-up. He would want this to expire in order for, again, them to engage in any level of fraud and not get caught. And of course, if you recall Donald Trump mentioning that when he was in office, looking at the media and the press gaggle outside of the White House and the back door of the White House, he openly looked at him and he said, "I caught them all. I've caught them all." And he certainly has. He's got them all right here. Again, this is not an executive order that you would want to re-up if you were the bad guys. This is an executive order that you would want to expire, no doubt about it. So, yes, there's more going on here, ladies and gentlemen. There's far more going on here, and it's good news. So there you go, geopolitical stuff. One quick mention here, if you're interested in watching the body cam footage of Colt Gray and his father on their front stoop of their house back in May of 2023, I will link that in the description below. It's an interesting interaction with police. It's kind of indicative that maybe the Colt kid was being a little disingenuous with his conversations potentially on Discord about school shootings or what have you. It's hard to know. But either way, the takeaway from it, from my perspective, is rather simple, that the father is not guilty of anything. The father isn't guilty of anything. Again, Colt Gray openly talks about killing a deer to this police officer who's having a very cordial conversation with him. There were two individuals from the sheriff's department talking with both. The father seemed concerned, but at the same time, it seemed like a house that has consequences. He seemed like a kid who didn't get in trouble by any stretch of the imagination. He wasn't a discipline problem. There's more going on here. But as you've heard me say, the entire process of going after the father is completely ridiculous. It's absolutely outrageous. The father had nothing to do with this whatsoever. So, again, I'll link that in the description below if you're interested in taking a look. And it's a basic interaction. It's a basic interaction with local police and, again, the county police, certainly the sheriff's department. And there's nothing that comes from it. Again, they take him for his word, and he openly says that he just got done with 7th grade and he's going into 8th grade. And again, that would have been the fall of 2023. And then here we are at the beginning of 2024, and allegedly this happens, with, again, allegedly him only being in school for 2 days. And again, I put a Substack up that included a video that a listener of the show sent me in the comments section of my BitChute channel. And I watched the video, and it's very well done. And the individual who does it asks a number of very good questions. Some of the questions I've mentioned here on the show, but again, it's remarkably suspicious. Why is it that one of the reporters from one of the outlets was talking about Colt Gray only being there for 2 days and only being enrolled in the school for 2 days, and yet you're talking to alleged students who attend the school and they're talking about it like he's there all the time. They're mentioning particular behaviors of this particular kid that seem scripted, and that there's no way that Colt Gray would actually be engaging in skipping class and a number of other things when they were only in school for 2 days. It was just beyond weird. Again, they were acting like they knew this kid when clearly they didn't. He was brand new to the school. It was his freshman year. and that's it. But again, it begs the question also, how did the gun get in the school? That's the biggest question, and no one's asking that question. Well, people are asking it, but they're certainly not answering it. And therein lies the problem. We're not seeing any security footage yet. So no one seems to be on the same page. No one's telling the truth regarding any of this. But the simple fact that they've locked up the dad for multiple charges of murder, manslaughter, and child endangerment, you have to be kidding me. This is completely politically motivated. Everybody should know that by now. And it's beyond disgusting. So I'll keep tabs on this particular story because, again, it is an infringement on all of our rights, not just theirs. It's the Crumbly playbook all over again, and the school isn't accepting any blame whatsoever. So there's that. Okay. Now, on to the largest part of this particular episode. And speaking of school districts that don't accept blame for what they do. Here's where I'm going to start this. I'm going to refresh everyone's memory as to who I'm discussing, who I'm bringing up, and what all of this means in the much larger picture. And then I'm going to game theory this out as best I can regarding what's likely to happen here in the future. You may recall that I, of course, live in Oxford, Ohio, and that the local school district is the Talawanda City School District. In my opinion, it's always been a corrupt school district because school districts are corrupt. This is what they do. This is how they operate. And the people who are attracted to very specific positions, and I'm going to highlight those here very quickly, but the people who are attracted to positions like school board members, superintendents, treasurers, HR departments, district office officials, and even building administrators. To hold one of these positions, it's very rare for an ethical human being to sit in one of those positions, rather. It happens, but albeit very rare. And usually, again, when an individual holds one of those positions and is morally sound and ethical and knows what the law is and follows the law, these individuals are there to hopefully do all of that and then clean house to some extent and get rid of the riffraff and get rid of the secretive nature of everything and the nepotism and endless other immoral behaviors that are rampant throughout this entire business. Keep in mind, this is not unique to just where I live. This happens nationwide. And one of the things that also happens nationwide with regularity is that school board members will resign, and they will do so in the middle of their terms. Now, as far as the Westerville City School District is concerned around Columbus, Ohio, which I've covered on the show with regularity for very personal reasons, along with, of course, professional reasons as well. One of their recent board members, of course, has resigned in the middle of their term under ethics violations and ethics investigations being part of it, and probably a number of other things, including just embarrassment and pressure and whatever else, for, of course, making votes that would favor their own daughter. Now, as you've heard me say before regarding that school district, no one on the board up there was wise enough to tell her that she couldn't vote for her own family members. In fact, they're also stupid up there that none of them knew that you couldn't do that. Because if they knew that you couldn't do that, they would have told one another that you couldn't do that. The simple fact that they didn't tell one another that they couldn't do that, and that no one on the board is allowed to do that, is indicative of the retardation of everybody on that board because, again, they had no idea. They had no idea that you could not vote for a family member, or that you could not vote on some kind of an issue or a policy or a contract or anything having to do with any family member or any personal connection to anyone. It's a direct ethics violation. So anyway, that again should show you that when everybody's thinking alike, someone's not thinking. Regarding the local school district where I live, the Talawanda City School District in Oxford, Ohio, board member David Bothist has now resigned. Let me refresh your memory on who David Bothist is. David Bothist is an individual who ran for school board back in 2020. In January of 2021, after winning, I didn't vote for him, but someone did, just 1 month into him holding his position, he solicited money as an elected official from school employees and people that he knew in both the school district where he is a school board member here locally in the town where I live, and probably in the town where he actually is a school teacher in a neighboring town. So he is a licensed school teacher in a neighboring town at a middle school, but he's also a school board member in the town where I live, not the same town. Either way, that's a massive ethics violation, and it's against the law. In fact, it's punishable and can be punishable up to the amount of money that he in fact solicited for the activity that he was attempting to engage in, which again was Super Bowl tickets for his husband and their 2 adopted black kids. And the 3 of those individuals ended up going on this particular trip. So again, it was indicative at the time, based on online posts that David Bathurst himself had already made and made public, and wasn't hiding any of this illegality. He just assumed, because he's not bright, that you could just do this and that this is okay. It's not okay. Not at all. But again, he set up a GoFundMe page, and I went over all this on the show back in the day. But again, numerous online screenshots, Facebook posts, you name it, along with agreements of teachers saying that they hit him up on particular payment apps and a number of other things. We're talking about, again, over $5,000. As a penalty, you can there are a number of penalties associated with that. But what can ultimately happen is you can be told to pay back that money. You can be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, and you can even go to jail. Now, it's a misdemeanor, but you also have to leave your position, whatever elected position that is. And then at the exact same time, I believe it says something in the state of Ohio, like you can't hold an elected position for at least 2 years after that. Point being, that was an ethics violation that he engaged in not 1 month into holding his position after taking the oath of office. And I got a hold of this information, and then I was the one who filed the ethics violation against him. And the entire district knew, because they got tagged in an email, so they all knew. There were county commissioners, I believe. The county commissioner's office even found out about this, because I contacted them. And then they told me, go to the ethics commission, and I did. So that sat up there since 2021. It was ironclad. It was in his own words on his own websites and own Facebook pages and GoFundMe and the whole thing. He was caught with his hands in the cookie jar and his pants down. It's that simple. But that was just one ethics violation that I filed way back when. There have been other ethics violations that have been filed against him. And now, he has resigned. Now, there's more to this than what you might imagine. And again, I've brought up a great deal of it on the show before, but I want to go through it step by step, because he, along with I'm sure others, were the ones who attempted to get my show turned off. They failed, and they will fail again if they were to ever try it again. I have lawyers involved. They know exactly what's going on, and they know exactly the retaliatory measures that people like him would engage in when somebody is attempting, again, to expose what is really happening. Because what's hard for these individuals to understand is that this is called oversight. And every American citizen has a responsibility to have oversight over elected officials, in particular when those individuals work with children or put forth policy having to do with children. Now, where this gets hairy for David Bathurst is the fact that he has a son who is still inside of the school district. And there is involvement having to do with his son and discipline. And there is also movement and proof that both David Bathurst and his husband have attempted to protect their son from either being caught or being held responsible for allegedly or potentially engaging in violent acts toward other students. Where if it were any other student, that student would be expelled. But because it just so happens to be the adopted son of a gay school board member, that somehow there's favoritism involved, perhaps. Certainly, again, that seems to be the case, and I have ample proof that that is in fact the case. But as a result of all of this, he is now resigned. Now again, I have a number of things I'm going to read through here because this is only the beginning. And this is something that the public needs to know, not just where I live, but again, regardless of where you live, this is an important deal. So you've heard me in the past talk about open records requests and how anybody can engage in an open records request. You send an email to the treasurer of the school board. It usually has to do with a particular gap of time in which you're attempting to obtain said emails, and then you include keywords having to do with the search on their end of emails or communications to and from particular individuals having to do with, again, certain people's names or subjects or what have you. If it has to do with a minor, they of course are supposed to redact that information and the names of said minor. Where it gets even more suspicious is if they redact something that they don't have to redact, but they redact it because it might show something that they don't want people to know about. So there's that aspect also. And school districts all across the nation engage in that very behavior. So 2 weeks ago, I put through an open records request via my lawyer to have them, which of course you don't need a lawyer to do an open records request, but I did. And a week after that, I received back approximately 7+ emails. The request that I made had to do with the time was between January of this year through a particular, I believe is the end of August of this year. And the keywords that I asked for had to do with my name, Sean Brooks, and then this show's name, American Education FM. And I'm going to tell you what emails I got back. The emails that I got back in chronological order, when read in chronological order, clearly show that David Bothist and his husband were pressuring the school board and the superintendent and the board president to shut down the public comment section of their board meetings, specifically on YouTube, and or eliminate the board meetings altogether from YouTube live streaming, and then revert back to a previous 2020 policy that was in place, that was put in by the board, that would have turned the entire board meeting into a written transcription of the board meeting, to where they even state in these emails that public comments could be summarized and that they wouldn't have to be word for word. Now, it's even worse than that, because again, if you're thinking censorship, that's exactly what it is. And then you should ask yourself, what are they afraid of? What are they trying to censor? What is it that they don't want people to know? Now, like any individual who has something to hide, they always play the victim. And they're always doing whatever they can to sound like the victim, and everybody's coming after me unfairly, and I haven't done anything wrong. In fact, they don't even say that. They just play the victim. And that people just don't like me, and now I'm tired of all of it, and I need to spend time with my family and protect them because we're the victims and blah, blah, blah. Only a guilty person would take that approach. An innocent person would stand firm and openly say, I've done nothing wrong. Prove that I've done something wrong. That's what an innocent person would say. And an innocent person would defend themselves. Logically, even in public. That hasn't happened here. So what this also has to do with, not just beyond this, or not just rather the censorship aspect, but it's the why. Why the censorship aspect? Well, you may recall that I did an episode a while back on this show specifically highlighting a board meeting where David Bothas lost his mind. And he immediately started saying, I was going to resign, but I'm going to be around for 2 more years and people are attacking me and attacking my family and blah, blah, blah. The question again is why? What is it that you've done or that you and your husband have done that is allegedly worth bringing up to the public? And then, of course, what is the school board themselves doing in order to work with you and your husband so that you get a favorable outcome or a procedural outcome that favors both of you and the district? Now, where in the ethics guidelines does it say that you are allowed to have a husband and a board member work together to pressure the board president, the superintendent, etc., including district lawyers, to get a policy made or to revert back to an old policy that, frankly, just involves censorship? I didn't read that anywhere in the ethics guidelines. And every state has them, and any state can check them out for elected officials, but it doesn't say you can do that. In fact, it is a direct ethics violation because you're engaging in a practice as an elected official to favor a family member. And in this case, that family member happens to be their adopted child. Then people should ask themselves the question, so what has their adopted child done that would require censorship to take place? You can see how serious this might be. So here's what I'm going to do. And I've already done it, but I haven't released it yet, but I'm going to. I have those emails in chronological order from my open records request that I made just 2 weeks ago and received a week ago. And I'm going to release it on Substack, asking some very serious questions, solely based on the information that is inside of these actual emails using their own words. Again, even the board president alludes to the fact that they're attempting to protect their child from something. So the story goes. Well, what is that exactly? And is that even accurate? Now, before I read his resignation letter, which, by the way, was posted by the district on the district's website, and then a local left-wing rag called the Oxford Free Press took his resignation letter and essentially, again, wrote about it, including particular passages, but because they're a left-wing rag, they don't ask any questions. They don't ask what this is really about. Why is he really leaving? Did the Ethics Commission and his ethics violations finally catch up with him? Was it the open records request that I made that clearly shows collusion and conspiracy to cover up something that might be very serious, if not illegal? I'm not sure. I don't know. But I think it's rather interesting, and I think the timing is rather interesting. Once I'm done here going through his resignation letter, which again, it's not that it's unusual that he would write such a thing or that an outgoing school board member would write such a thing. What is unusual is that the district would put this out on their website and give him the forum to do that. He could just resign and there could just be a brief statement of resignation. But he's allowing, and the district rather, is allowing him to make personal digs at individuals, including a sitting board member and her husband, who have done a pretty good job of asking very serious questions. and getting people, again, to understand, hopefully, that you have laws you have to follow, and that when you're an elected official, as opposed to a private citizen, there are just that many more laws and policies and procedures and codes of conduct that you have to follow. That even when you're a license holder of a license in the education profession, even if you're a doctor, a nurse, a lawyer, and you have licenses, people can go after your licenses. Because if you violate codes of conduct, specifically, conduct unbecoming an educator is common terminology in this business, then again, you can lose your license or have penalties put on your actual teaching license. So when you have a board member and their husband and other citizens in the town holding elected officials in a school board accountable, why is that a bad thing? Only someone with something to hide would think that that's a bad thing. I highly doubt that anything is being made up. I think there are too many moving parts here. I have a pretty good idea as to what some of it is, but I think you can figure it out yourself also. So here's the resignation letter. He said the following: Dear Dr. Howard and others. Dr. Howard, Rebecca Howard, by the way, is the board president. He said, quote, It is with a heavy heart and profound sadness that I tender my immediate resignation September 9th, 2024, as an elected member of the Talawanda School District Board of Education. This incredibly difficult decision has become unavoidable due to the relentless, uncivilized, and personal attacks against my family and me, fueled by and directly intertwined with attempts to unseat the current superintendent. Let me spend a second on that sentence. So, what's uncivilized about holding someone accountable? He says personal attacks, so what? If people don't like your behavior, they get to bring it up. They get to say it. Again, what's funny is that when elected officials are in the limelight, so to speak, or the spotlight rather, they act as if their behaviors are not going to be mentioned by anyone. And they hide behind this cloak of children as if to say, well, I'm just helping children. How dare you? I'm just helping children. Well, I'm sorry. That's not what's going on. And anybody paying attention to the board meetings as I have, and the inner workings of what's been taking place in this particular school district, it's painfully obvious there's more going on here. Again, but this is the victim status. This is the virtue signaling. I'm being attacked. You're an elected official. That's what happens. It says, I refuse to stand by and watch what I feel is the hard work of the board and many community members to restore Talawanda's reputation, integrity, financial stability, and safety undermined by a personal vendetta based in hate and discrimination that also appears to be working to dismantle the district from within. This is also funny, because how are you restoring a school district's reputation, integrity, and financial stability and or safety when you've been sitting on the board now for 3 years and have done nothing to fix or alleviate the thing that you caused in the first place? Now, somebody like him, of course, would blame the invisible COVID. Well, it was the pandemic, and it was COVID, and the COVID pandemic and the pandemic COVID. None of those are real. That doesn't exist. So you're blaming something that doesn't exist. And you're blaming your lack of knowledge on a thing that doesn't exist for your current state of problems. Again, there's no reflection going on here. There's no looking in the mirror. There's no, wow, I made a bad choice. Maybe I made some bad decisions. Maybe I could have done something different. Nope. These are the questions people should ask themselves anytime something like this happens. And again, they hang themselves with their own words, and they cause more people, hopefully, to ask more questions based on what they say. Again, you give anybody engaging in unethical behavior enough rope, they'll hang themselves with it, and if you give them the opportunity to talk, they'll talk themselves right into the ground all of the time professionally, because that's what they do. Staying quiet is a skill that is lost among some. But they think that they can talk their way out of these kinds of things and then blame just anybody. He goes on here. He says the costs, and by the way, I should say this, he's also using this as an excuse to somehow protect the superintendent. That people are trying to come after the superintendent and he's in their way. David Bathurst is standing in their way because he's got his chest out and he's protecting the superintendent. First of all, both of them are gay, and if they want to be, okay, but that has nothing to do with it. The fact is that each individual is responsible for their own individual behavior and professional behavior. And Edward Thoreau, the superintendent of this school district, well, there might be some things that come down the line regarding him also. But his resignation letter, Bathurst's anyway, goes on here and it says the following. The costs of this assumed vendetta are immense. Since January 2024, the district has incurred tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees, FOIA requests, and investigations, a significant drain on resources that could have been better utilized to support our students and educators. I cannot be complicit in such wasteful spending, nor the emotional toll it has taken on my family or the entire community. I'm going to stop it there again. Do you see what I mean? He just admitted that he's involved with why people are lawyering up, making FOIA requests, and how it's costing the district copious amounts of money to engage in all these public FOIA requests, and that it's costing the district more money to have their lawyers do the job that they're apparently doing in an attempt to do what? Defend you? From what? What have you done? What's the district done? And then, of course, again, more virtue signaling. I can't be complicit in this wasteful spending. You're involved. You're involved in it. And you could be the reason for the wasteful spending. Could be more people, too. He continued, and he said it wasn't long ago that we said goodbye to highly qualified and beloved teachers in our community due to potential financial cuts. This wound is and will always be fresh to me. Depleting funds that could have saved these positions because of personal prejudice is not right. With someone so blinded by hate, having access to sensitive student information and apparently willing to leverage said information for personal gain, every Talawanda family and any teacher who crosses her/them should feel at risk. Now here's who he's referring to. Again, also playing the victim. He's making it sound like he's now doing the very thing that he just said in the first paragraph that he wouldn't do and wasn't going to do. And that is that there's division inside. See, what he's doing now is he's sowing seeds of division. And he's claiming that Dawn King, a board member, and her husband are asking questions and that they shouldn't be asking questions. And that all these questions being asked is backing up on the district in not a good way and costing them money. So again, how many lawyers do you have involved in whatever it is you're having to legally defend yourself from? And why is that somehow the problem of the public? Seems like the public should need to know that. Seems like the public should need to know why all of this money is being spent by your district to allegedly defend you. What is it that you've all done? But again, he engages in name-calling. Says her and them. That's a direct implication, again, of attacking Dawn King, her husband, me, potentially, and or others. So what? He continues to hang himself out to dry here, and he said, quote, continuing along, I campaigned for this position with the sincere hope of serving as a voice for our community, and throughout my tenure, I strived to uphold my commitment. You mean like paying yourself back over $5,000 for Super Bowl tickets and soliciting that money from staff members? You mean like that? It says, during times of financial emergency, I tirelessly met with teachers, residents, and parents. Even when the levy failed, thank God it did, I continued to advocate for the community's voice through surveys, etc. I lost countless precious Talawanda moments with my own children, approached by frustrated constituents at various events. It became so overwhelming that I began to isolate myself, suffering anxiety and panic attacks when attending school functions. It caused a rift between me, my community, my husband, and even my children. Victim, victim, victim. Virtue signal, virtue signal, virtue signal. If you can't take the heat, kitten, get out of the kitchen. If you can't take the spotlight, don't run for public office. If you can't handle questions being asked, why did you take the position in the first place? Which, by the way, you ran for office at arguably the worst time in American history to be an asleep human being. And people have to keep something in mind, too, is that he's not the only person, as I said earlier, who's resigning in the middle of their term. All of this is catching up to them. They think that they can just sit on the board and be friends with people and be related to people in the district or have kids in the district or be the quote-unquote proverbial parent who, loves kids and loves the district and is married to the town and the whole thing. Or even be in the business themselves, and that all of this somehow qualifies them for holding an elected position. It's beyond evident that that's not a qualification. You have to be a morally sound human being first. You have to follow the law. You have to know what the law is that you have to follow, and you can't favor anybody. And by the way, if something is taking place that is bringing untoward attention toward yourself or others or those you know, you remove yourself or others from said environments where particular things are taking place that are bringing untoward attention. Again, if you don't want to get burned, stop touching the hot stove or unplug the stove. There's endless examples I could bring up. Again, this lack of common sense is amazing to me. He goes on here. He's not done. He said, quote, the mental duress on my family, particularly my young son, has also become unbearable. What does he have to do with this? What's he have to do with this? Why are you bringing him into this? Is he involved in some way? It says the vile and bigoted attacks based on lies and unsubstantiated claims and fueled by a small but vocal group have consumed an inordinate amount of my family's time, money, and emotional energy. While our emotional health has suffered, the district's finances and morale are also victims. Oh, okay. So human beings holding people accountable by asking questions and then reporting on their behavior that has been unethical is somehow our fault. That's somehow the citizens' fault. It's not your fault. Got it. You're not to blame. You've done nothing wrong. Got it. No problem. It's just everybody else's fault, because apparently you're calling everybody a bigot. And saying that whatever they're talking about is unsubstantiated. Well, what's unsubstantiated exactly? What claims are being made that you can substantiate are in fact the way that you think that they are? He went on here, he said, to the teachers, I tried to support, I apologize for not being able to continue the fight. What fight? I leave this position with a heavy heart but a clear conscience. Well, that's debatable. I would doubt you have a conscience. He goes on and says, I lived up to the tenets of my campaign. Really? Soliciting money 1 month into taking the oath? Was that a tenet, or did I miss that part in the oath? I hereby say that I will solicit money to pay myself back for Super Bowl tickets, so help me God. I mean, was that a part of it? I didn't think that was a part of the oath for school board members. It says, sadly, there are those who feel called to action by sharing falsehoods, unsubstantiated claims, and simply slandering me and my family to attack anyone who challenges their position or even appears to do so without real evidence. One aggressor even suggested I commit suicide. Suicide. Over a school board role. I became a teacher to support and protect children. Now I must protect my own. I wish the Talawanda School District the best and hope that one day civility and reason will prevail. Sincerely, David Bathurst, Masters in Science. Again, I find the word usage and the word selection rather interesting. Could be a lawyer wrote this up. Slandering, sharing falsehoods, unsubstantiated claims, attacking anyone who challenges their position, telling me I should kill myself. What is all of this? What is this? What are you doing? Answer a basic question. What is it that you have to hide? Do you have something to hide? You claim in your own resignation letter, as he does here, that lawyers are involved, that FOIA requests are constantly being made. What for? Again, every statement he makes comes with at least 10 to 20 more questions. So I would encourage him to continue to talk. Please, we'd like to know what else you think. What else is happening in the district? How much money are they spending on lawyers? How hard are your lawyers working? What are they working on? See how this works? You give these people enough slack, they'll take it. And they'll use it on themselves. This kind of thing, it happens nationwide all of the time. And they also don't understand that virtue signaling isn't virtuous in any way. It's cowardice. As I said at the top, if you had nothing to hide, and individuals like him have nothing to hide, well, then you would have stayed in the position. Again, what are you afraid of? What have you done? And what have you done with other individuals? You know, the nepotistic nature, which you've heard me talk about with regularity in this business, is rampant. There are school boards that exist in towns and cities all across the nation where you cannot run for school board if you have a family member who works in the school board. You're not allowed to. There are also districts, plenty of them, even in the state of Ohio, where you are not allowed to work in that district as an employee of the district if you have a family member who already works within the district. There are schools specifically that have policies, even districts, that state that you cannot marry someone who lives within the school or the district. Now, why is it that they have those policies in place? They have those in place for very good reason. It's not just to save them from potential legal trouble. or even, I should say, the court of public opinion. But it is, in essence, done to save them from any untoward influence or even the image of favoritism, regardless of the underlying issue. That this person is hiring this person because they're related, or this person is protecting this person because they're related, or we're going to vote on this or we're going to vote on that because these people think that this is important and we have a close relationship with these people. They're actually, again, districts that do that and think that far ahead are doing it on purpose. They're doing it to save themselves money, time, any headache that comes about, so that if somebody says, well, you're only doing this because of your relationship with said person, they can look at them and say, said person doesn't exist here. There is no relationship. There's no relation. There's no connection. There's nothing. Again, it's a preventative measure. And this is actually a preventative measure that could exist in a district like this, but it doesn't. Too many people are tied in. Endless individuals favor one another all of the time. And again, in my future Substack article, which you're going to read and you're going to see very clearly, David Bothist and his husband were working with the board to do something, whether it was protection or something related to their son. They make mention of it without saying his name. They're very specific that it has to do with their family. And then Rebecca Howard, the board president, verifies that. All for the purpose of censorship and censoring people from coming up to the lectern during a school board meeting and telling the board members what's going on regarding issue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. What happened to transparency? What happened to your favorite vocabulary word, transparency? This is why, as you've heard me say before, the people who use that phrase are furthest from. They're as transparent as a bucket of mud. It's the dead giveaway. It's the NPC vocabulary that they use that they think absolves them of something just because they say it. I'm the victim, therefore it must be. I'm transparent, therefore I am. I'm being attacked by bigoted and slanderous and unsubstantiated this, that, and the other. Prove it. Because I can prove the exact opposite. But see, again, this is the role of the public. This is the role of the public in a republic. We do not live in a democracy. A democracy means that what you say goes. Nope, that's not where we live. That's not how things work here. And again, I find it very funny that he references a loud minority, as even he has said, as even you've heard him say on this show, that there's a very loud minority and a very quiet majority. No, there isn't. There's a very loud majority. And the loud majority wants oversight, they ask questions, and they want factual answers. And if they don't get them, then all you're doing is raising more suspicion about what you're doing. Which means, what do you think comes with that? More questions. More suspicion. Do you see how this works? It's amazing. I find it fascinating that these people can't piece this together. It's absolutely incredible to me. You've also heard me say this, which is that the only test that matters is the test of time. Something tells me that this isn't going away. Something tells me that this is just a snowflake on a tip of an iceberg, and that they can attempt to run away from whatever it is that they've done and what they're doing and who and what and how they're trying to protect one another. But that isn't going to work. They've apparently never read the Bible. They apparently have never read any ancient philosophers when it comes to the business of the truth. It always finds a way. Let me read this now. This was from the local left-wing rag. It's called the Oxford Free Press. Now, in this town, we used to have a paper that was called the Oxford Press, and it was embarrassing. It was, again, nobody could do anything wrong, unless, of course, you were arrested by somebody, or you were a Miami University student who I don't know, passed out in a pile of their own sick in the middle of the road or something like that, or somebody lost a cat, or your garden produced a lot of vegetables throughout the summer. That was basically all that the paper was good for. There were no investigative reporters that actually existed and did any digging, and certainly didn't hold anybody accountable, let alone elected officials. Well, this free online paper called the Oxford Free Press isn't any different. This is allegedly put together by Sean Scott and a board of other left-wing nitwits, but either way, it was titled, David Bathurst, first-term Talawanda board member, resigns. It says, David Bathurst, a member of the Talawanda Board of Education, resigned September 9th following what he called a campaign of harassment targeting him and his family. That's not why people resign. Again, the very business of a resignation indicates that you've done something. It indicates that you've hidden from something, or are hiding from something, or trying to keep something hidden. Again, he basically goes through the entire resignation letter that I put out and that I just read. He said, according to a public notice posted on the district's blog, the resignation is effective September 9th. The author of this article went on and said, at a board meeting July 9th, Bathurst said that he and his family have faced harassment since he ran for the position in 2021, pushing him to contemplate resignation. Quote, I'm physically and emotionally done with the vitriol and the abuse that my family and myself have endured since the launch of my campaign, unquote, Bathurst said during the meeting. At the same meeting, Scotty King, husband of current board member Don King, accused Bathurst of violating the First Amendment by blocking him on Facebook. Scotty King also read from an email sent by Bathurst to an administrator which mentioned protecting children. But King did not provide context for the email during the meeting. I'll provide some context. It's pretty evident that in the open records request that I did, which will be on my Substack page in due time, that this has to do with their son. This has to do with David Bathurst's son. Again, they use the words safety in these emails. Safety regarding their son, or safety regarding other people because of their son? I don't know. Seems like it. Seems like it's something. The other interesting part, too, which is hilarious, is that as an elected official, David Bathurst apparently didn't understand that you can't block any constituent on social media whatsoever. That if you have a social media page, you're not allowed to block them. So what did he do in response? Once he found out that he couldn't do that, he just deleted his entire Facebook page and all the posts, apparently. I mean, you're allowed to do that, but you can't hand select who you want to listen to or who you want to block and who you don't. The article goes on, and again, the author says, Bathurst said later at the meeting, that he sent the email as a parent concerned about, quote, the things that were happening to my son and the things that weren't happening as a result of us reaching out. The email, Bathurst said, was being used as leverage against him and his family. Wait a minute. Now you're admitting that it has to do with your son, but you claim in your resignation letter that this has what? That people are just blindly attacking you and your family for what? Most people don't usually do that unless they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing. The author went on and said in his resignation letter posted by the district, Bothus wrote, that he felt the personal attacks were connected to attempts to unseat the current superintendent, Ed Thoreau. The district has spent tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees since January because of the attacks, Bothus wrote. Bothus wrote that he wishes the district the best, but that he cannot continue the fight. After winning the seat in 2021, Bothus told the Oxford Observer, another online left-wing rag, that everyone during the campaign was forced on the well-being of Talawanda students. Quote, now I hope we can put the campaign aside and start working on bringing the district together and on the issues we need to solve, Bothus told the Observer at the time. Quote, at the end of the day, we are all brave. Because we were, or at least the district was rather, the Talawanda Braves, but they made it singular to basically cause everybody to forget Native Americans because they said that it was offensive to Native Americans. This is the mindset of these people. Which, by the way, no one with a brain has forgotten the mask-wearing lie, and that you gagged children, isolated them, forced them to take a faulty test that tests for nothing, contact traced them, used Bolshevistic tactics against them, to use students against one another to question them along with parents, and then hunt them all down to figure out who needs to be isolated and suspended because of a so-called illness that you think exists which never existed. And you expect everybody to just forget that, move along, and let's all work together. I think not. No one should work with child abusers, let alone ignorant ones. And you would think that those two things would go hand in hand. I know lots of stupid people who aren't child abusers. But gagging children? Not allowing them to freely breathe? Why? Because strangers at the health department told you that that was okay? This is what perplexes me about the human race. I mean, humans drive me nuts. Why would you send your child to an environment that wants to keep them from breathing? Well, it's COVID, Sean. It's because of COVID. There is no COVID. Never existed. Not a thing. Viruses aren't real. Been over it at length. Written about it at length. Ample proof. But people don't want to believe that because believing their convoluted lie is so much easier. The author goes on, unfortunately, and says, in his 3 years on the board, Bothus was involved in a wide range of decisions, particularly regarding the district's finances. After a levy failed to pass in 2022, the board voted on a series of budget cuts to generate $5.3 million in savings over 3 years. The district later got an influx of funding because of a property tax reappraisal, which we didn't pick. 88 counties in the state of Ohio, 44 of them, that's half, 44 of them had their taxes increased, property taxes increased by, 37 to 41%? And he thinks that that had something to do with him? Or that board members anywhere would think that that has something to do with them? It's asinine. Taxing American citizens unlawfully is not the decision of a school board, although a school board would think that they're profiting from that in some way. And that again, I mean, you talk about discrimination. That right there is it. Taxation is legalized theft. They're stealing from people to then do what? Give it right back to the brainwashing apparatus that is the American K-12 school district, that is government. It's government stealing from a free people to then give it back to themselves. But he thinks that's an accomplishment, or school districts think that's some kind of an accomplishment that they had something to do with. It goes on, it says, based on the results of a survey sent to parents and staff in the spring of 2024, Bathurst voted against returning to a busing system that would provide transportation to more students and change the school start times. That was an unpopular vote. But again, teachers' unions were involved and selfish teachers were involved, and I don't want to wake up earlier, and I don't want to go to work earlier. I like it the way it is now. So it's not about students then, is it? It's not about providing transportation for everybody equally. Again, I'm shocked anybody relies on government to teach their child. They're not teaching them. They're abusing them. Bathurst served as the board's legislative liaison, providing updates on local, state, and national laws that might impact K-12 education. The Oxford Free Press has reached out to Board President Rebecca Howard for comment. According to the Ohio School Boards Association, now this is the second part of this discussion here, which I'm going to break down in detail. The author of this, Sean Scott, wrote, according to the Ohio School Boards Association, school boards must act to fill vacancies within 30 days for board members, as its, quote, regular or special meeting, at its regular or special meeting. And then he said, if the board fails to fill the vacancy within that time, it falls to the county's probate court to fill the position. Talawanda's policy manual states that the board must seek qualified and interested candidates from the community, unquote, through news outlets, word of mouth, and other organizations. Applicants must then indicate their interest in writing to the board president, and the board may then interview interested candidates. A majority of the remaining board members can then vote to choose the new member. Talawanda's next board meeting is scheduled for 8 p.m. Thursday, September 19th, unquote. Now, let me go through this policy here first also, because this matters. I'm going to tell you what they're going to do, and then I'm going to tell you what they should do, that they're not going to do. As you might expect, the latter explanation that I'm going to provide is the ethical one. The one that they're going to do is going to be the unethical one. Then again, I could be wrong. Here's what they're probably going to do. What they're probably going to do is that individuals are going to apply for the position, and they're ultimately just going to pick and select a sycophant. The majority of the board is just going to pick someone that agrees with the majority of the board. That's about it. They probably already have someone in mind. They probably already have had someone in mind. It really won't matter either, their credentials. Not to mention, again, you really don't have to have them. Your lead credential needs to be someone who is hopefully awake and ethical and morally sound and follows the law. But you can only do all of that if you know what the law is and what the ethics guidelines are and what they entail. And, this is a big one, if you find out that someone or people who are elected officials or employees in the district are not being ethical or violating the Ohio Codes of Conduct for license holders in the field of education, you have to hold them accountable. Now, who do you think is really going to do any of that? It would take a morally sound individual to do that. That's it. That's all it takes. But that's not what they're going to do. They're going to hire a sycophant who agrees with them. Because that's typically what happens in situations like this. They hire like-minded people. The majority of the board will vote for a like-minded person that fits with the majority. That's typically how it goes. Now that's what they're going to do. if I was to take a guess. Here's what they should do, that they won't do, but they should, because these are the people who completely and always state transparency is their number one concern, that the views of the public and safety and security are our number one concern. This is what they always say. But as I said earlier, they're as transparent as a bucket of mud. So here's what they should do, because this is a process that exists in numerous districts who don't engage in discretion. They're just smart people, and they know that this is a way that it can be done. So here's what should happen. What they should do is they should take 30 days. Not the next board meeting. But they should say, we have 30 days. So we're going to take some time. And we're going to gather resumes and letters of interest, and you name it. And we're going to make those names known to people so that people know who is interested in this interim position, because they are an interim board member, potentially. They're seeking an interim position. So they should never be called a board member. They should just be called an interim board member. As that's happening, and as they're gathering all of that information, they would do well to not delete any of it, but make it known to people. They're not going to do that, though. Then, in the next board meeting, again, whether it be the one that's going to exist a week from now or even a month from now, they should have an open session where these individuals are allowed to come and give their 5-minute or even 10-minute spiel as to why they think they should be on the board. This would happen before the public comments section. In fact, they can call a separate meeting for the public to witness all of these individuals, free of all the other gaslighting bullshit that they do in their board meetings, patting themselves on the back and saying that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread and they hung the moon and blah, blah, blah. They can have a separate meeting where all they do is this. They give the forum to the individuals who are interested in running for the position. These people who are set to speak then in this meeting for said position have already submitted their paperwork for consideration for the position. They show up to the microphone, they are recorded, this is aired on YouTube, and then individuals can speak their piece regarding the position that they are seeking. Once that's done, regardless of how long it takes, they go into executive session as a board, and they knock it down to 3 people. Then they give those 3 people, if there are even more than 3 who apply, but then they give those 3 people 3 minutes, or even 5 minutes instead of potentially 10 at the outset of this whole thing. And then they give them 3 or 5 minutes to basically, again, reiterate what it is that they would like to do. Thank you for considering me for the top 3 people. Now, here's something else that I would like to mention about something that I'm interested in doing. And then they go back as a board into executive session and they pick one person. They come back from executive session and they say, and they vote. Or they could even do this in the full interest of transparency with the last 3 individuals that they've selected. They simply vote right then and there. Let's take a vote on person A. And then they go around the horn, keeping in mind now that there's 4 board members. So they go around the horn, and all you would need, of course, is a majority. And then that's it. And then they would pick that person out of the 3. That right there is exactly what should happen, in my humble and professional opinion. But it's not going to. Because that would require effort. That would require a conscience. That would require morals and values and ethics and everything else. But that's not going to happen. They'll say, here's honest to God, I can see them doing it. They'll come out and they'll say, the board president, by they, I mean her, she'll come out and she'll say, we received a lot of interesting candidates and we appreciate all of the interest in this very important position as we move forward, and we wish David Bothus the best, and we hope that the new board member can fill his shoes, and blah, 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 blah. So it'll be backpatting, and then they'll just pick someone, and they'll say, we have decided as a majority on the board to pick this person. And then that person might come up and be recognized and say thank you, and they might take the oath right then and there, and then they might even take a seat, or they'll wait for the next board meeting to take the oath and then take the seat and then take over the responsibilities. But what has to happen is that someone on the board has to say how they all voted. Who agreed and who did not? Why did they agree? Why did they not? What are the person's credentials? Are they just a meat sack with a pulse who has an agenda, who wants to get up there and just agree with everybody just because? Or do they actually have a stance on a particular thing that the public needs to know about? See, that's transparency. That's what that means. It doesn't mean that you are fluid and that you just bend with the wind, or that you bend with this person's opinion or that. It means that you're letting everybody know what's going on. In particular, when it comes to an interim elected position, for which, again, this individual taking this position, when they do, whoever they may be, they are not elected. Again, they're just holding the position until the regular position's term ends, and then they can run for said position again if they want to, or they can drop out and there can be a brand new race for that particular position. And that's it. But I'm telling you right here, right now, you've got to be a special kind of retarded to want that position. And it's not because the right thing can't happen. It could. But what makes you think that a school district who is under federal indictment and investigation right now is going to pick someone who disagrees with them? Why would that happen? Why would they do that? They wouldn't. They're going to pick someone who defends their actions to the bone. And that right there is the state of affairs, ladies and gentlemen. That's the business. Yes, you can get majorities on the board who will do the right thing. As you've heard me say before, yes, you can have that majority get rid of the riffraff and vote out all of the riffraff, including superintendents, treasurers, etc., etc., etc. You can take an entire wrecking ball to the district office, and all of that can and should happen. But then you have to put into place measures that make you independent. Independent. Now, a district this size will never be an independent school district dependent on just property taxes and or donations. They still need state funds, and independent school districts don't get state funds, which means they are still beholden to all of the state's brainwashing and torture and government control that the state has on teachers, administrators, etc., etc. Which means the curriculum is not going to change. The curriculum ultimately is the problem, and the people teaching the false curriculum are the problem, because they don't know that they're teaching a false curriculum about fake science, fake history, and they're really not, again, teaching children how to read and write, as I've been over on this show numerous times regarding literacy. This is the issue. But I also find it funny that if the district or their lawyers or whomever think that coming after my show is going to fix their problems, you're sorely mistaken. This show isn't your problem. You are the problem. So you can give yourselves brain transplants, lobotomies, or you can just decide to be a good person. and own up to what you've attempted to apparently protect or avoid the public knowing. Or you can continue to do what you've been doing that has gotten you in the position that you're all apparently in. It's your choice, but it's got nothing to do with me. I'm not an employee there. I am, however, a voter. And voters are allowed to have oversight over people like this. And we do, because we can, because that's our right. In a republic, not a democracy. In a democracy, there would be no oversight. It would be what one person says goes, or what the majority says goes, even though in a republic, we still have the ability to vote people out and have oversight over particular decisions and watch people like hawks. Because when you're an elected official, as I said earlier, that comes with the territory. And if you have skeletons in your closet, this is not the job to have. And if you decide to throw more skeletons in said closet, it's really not the job to have. Because all you're going to do is do that in the public, and people will see that, and then they will ask questions, and so on and so on. And they will make all of the moves that they can legally make. So I'm going to have suggestions for the public on moves that they can make if they know that a law has been broken. Stay tuned for my next Substack, which will include the open records request that I made regarding me and my show, individuals who attempted allegedly to take it down, and then protect themselves in the process, regarding, again, their own child, as a board member and as a married man outside of their married board member, and then allegedly colluding with board members and or the superintendent and board president to censor people. It's not a good look. I'm just throwing it out there. Not a good look. Not a good look. When you attempt to unplug the television, you're trying to keep people from seeing something. When you turn off the radio, there's something you don't want them to listen to. And when you victim blame, and play the victim, and virtue signal out the wazoo, well, that shines an even brighter light, and that even turns up the heat even more. Remember in the episode back in, I believe it was July, maybe even June, I forget which, when I played the audio from the board meeting where David Bothist went off and said again, I was going to resign, but I've decided to stay. And I'll be here for 2 more years, and I'm going to fill out my term because that's the thing that needs to be done, or something to that effect. As soon as he said that, it was the nail in the coffin. As soon as he said that, as soon as you put a timeline on something like that, you're finished. So what happened? What happened, Dave? Sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, you can just predict these things. Again, having been in the business myself and a whistleblower in the business, I know how these people operate. That's why I bring this information to people. There's a lot that they don't want you to know. That's not an accident. It's a big on purpose. And in conclusion here, jab-related, speaking of things that the government doesn't want you to know, give this audio a listen. This has to do with the FDA and their open admission regarding the monkeypox vaccine and what it will apparently do to not only the people who take it, but the people around the people who take it, who don't take it themselves. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
On August 30th, the FDA gave extended clearance for the smallpox vaccine ACAM 2000. It is the second smallpox vaccine to be approved for use for monkeypox. Both Jynneos and ACAM 2000 have been stockpiled by the hundreds of millions in the National Strategic Stockpile. So in light of this extended FDA clearance, I'd like to share a couple snippets from the ACAM 2000 vaccine insert. I shared this back in 2022, but it's definitely relevant now that they're going to be administering ACAM 2000 to high-risk individuals for monkeypox. And like all other vaccines, ACAM 2000 comes with a laundry list of adverse effects, including encephalitis, myocarditis, but there's something at the bottom of the insert that you don't see with most vaccines, and that is, and I quote, death to unvaccinated individuals who have contact with vaccinated individuals, end quote. The ACAM 2000 insert goes on further to state that individuals who are vaccinated with this vaccine should basically quarantine for 4 weeks after injection. They should not handle babies, be around pregnant women, go swimming, be in a hot tub, use a public restroom, rub or touch the vaccination site, share a bed, clothing, or close contact with an unvaccinated individual, be around anyone who has eczema or other autoimmune issues. Now, how many people who take this vaccine are going to basically self-isolate in their house for 4 weeks so as not to infect anybody else? The insert also goes on to say that the ACAM 2000 smallpox vaccine may, in fact, spread the smallpox virus to other people.
Ladies and gentlemen, this being right thing is exhausting. It's really getting exhausting. In that one video, and I have the document right here, so it's not some random person on TikTok falsifying anything. It's fda.gov/media 75792/download. It's the actual package insert. It's basically the entire documentation having to do with what is called ACAM, there we go, ACAM 2000, smallpox and mpox vaccine. What she just described proves everything that I've brought up here on the show regarding medicine. It proves electromagnetism is how people become ill, i.e. shedding. It proves not only is shedding and electromagnetism the way that people become ill, but that gain of function means toying with these shots to not just make the shot recipient ill, but the electromagnetic close contact individual who is not the shot recipient ill. It doesn't say anything about coughing and sneezing on them. It says don't be physically around them, don't touch them. That's electromagnetism, because we are electric beings. This proves viruses aren't real. It's in the actual paperwork itself here. This ACAM 2000 vaccine, under their warnings, which are vast, it says the following. This is just a taste. It says myocarditis and pericarditis, suspect cases observed at a rate of 5.7 per 1,000 primary vaccines. Encephalitis, encephalomyelitis, no way I'm getting that right, my apologies, myelitis, there we go. Encephalopathy, progressive vaccina, generalized vaccina, general vaccinal skin infections. Oh, those general infections you get after injecting yourself with something. Arrhythmia, it says. Multiform major, including Stevens-Johnson syndrome. Eczema, resulting in permanent sequelae or death. They just toss that in there and sprinkle that on, or you'll die, no big deal. Accidental eye infection, which can cause ocular complications and may lead to blindness and fetal death. Good Lord. Have occurred following, it says, either primary vaccination or revaccination with ACAM 2000 or other live vaccinavirus vaccines that were used historically. These risks are increased in certain individuals and may result in severe disability, permanent neurological sequelae, if I'm saying that right, and or death. Good to know. So what exactly is it preventing? The answer is nothing. It's preventing nothing. If a person has smallpox, quote unquote, or monkeypox, quote unquote, that is a side effect from having VAIDS, vaccine-acquired immune deficiency syndrome, which is a side effect of being jabbed with the COVID shots and or any other shot at this point. It's a vaccine for things that don't exist. They're trying to kill people. How is this? Why do people not understand this? They want people dead. Finally, this comes from naturalnews.com titled, World Economic Forum finally tells the truth about COVID. Quote, it was a test, unquote, for our obedience to rapidly forming New World Order. Now, you know this because, again, if you've been listening to the show this entire time, you know that I wargamed this entire thing out based on their own documentation because they wargamed it. They wargamed this entire thing. They have all the documentation that is government documentation that is not classified. It's even on my website. Anybody can read this, that they openly state what they're doing and what they're doing again to gain more compliance in the future. Because they didn't get the compliance they wanted the first time through, although they got plenty. But they need it fully the next time, which is why they're pushing COVID shots now on newborn babies. It says here, COVID-19 was the test of social responsibility. A huge number of unimaginable restrictions for public health were adopted by billions of citizens across the world. There were numerous examples globally of maintaining social distancing, wearing masks, mass vaccination, and acceptance of contact tracing, applications for public health, which demonstrated the core of individual social responsibility, so they say. In fact, I will conclude now by reading this. This was a Chan post on the Chan boards here back in March of this year. It says the following, quote, reminder to all vaxies. You believed a conspiracy theory where a new virus came out of a wet market that jumped to humans from a pangolin and appeared suddenly around the world with no clear method of proliferation during flu season, in which a flu-like disease was killing millions in the same year that the flu was eliminated completely from the earth, and the only way to combat the disease was to mask yourself with Batman pajamas and to go outside while waiting for a single miracle cure made by criminals and forced upon you by politicians who believe men can get pregnant. And now you all have cancer. Retards. Unquote. Not asking questions, ladies and gentlemen, and not learning, and blindly believing elected officials, strangers on your TV, peer pressure, you name it, is not a survivable characteristic. To tie this all together again, it's that old meme. The very environment of schools specifically that told people, don't take drugs, don't listen to strangers, and don't fall for peer pressure, somehow tricked society into trusting strangers, taking drugs, and falling for peer pressure. And people think what? There aren't consequences with that? There are always consequences. Always. It's only a matter of time. One final thing, ladies and gentlemen, on this September 11th anniversary, there were no planes on 9/11. If you're unaware of that, my recommendation is you bounce over to the americanclassroom.substack.com, check out the 2 videos that I have on my latest Substack article. Evidence, ladies and gentlemen, it's just about evidence. The truth is always in the evidence. With that said, thank you for listening as always, and I'll catch you on Friday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.